I was going to start the podcast with a solemn declaration on how John Williams has been the soundtrack not only of my life, but different generations of lives. Instead, I'll start it off with a story about driving to Domino's Pizza with my wife. I had the John Williams Apple playlist playing in the car, and I was pontificating about how the Superman theme basically sounded like Superman was being expressed by the music, to which my wife looked at me wryly and stated that you could put any two syllables there, not just Superman. She was right, of course. Hi, and welcome to the Pop Culture Basement Podcast. My name is Mike Jamison, and I'm your host. And with me to discuss the music and the legacy of John Williams this morning, coming to us bathed in light as I am on Mustafar in the darkness of my basement, but she is bathed in light. So I'm trying to think, where would you would be on Naboo, because it's very bright where you are, and I am down in my basement, and it looks like I just need lava behind me. But with me is my first returning guest, and also she was the guest on my first episode ever, so I am happy to have her back. KRISTINA Dowler, how are you today?
I'm so good and so excited to be here. Like you said, John Williams, I think, has been the soundtrack to so many people's lives, so I'm really excited to get to talk about it today.
I know. Is it weird that I think this is like Facebook culture, because especially this week, I'm going to date stamp when we're recording this. There were a lot of celebrities who passed away this week. And I have always thought, well, you know, John Williams is getting up there. And I've always have that in my back pocket because, you know, there's so many people on Facebook who are just waiting to hear what I'm going to say about John Williams. But I in the back of my mind, I've always thought, well, you know, when John Williams passes away, the first thing I'm going to write is he was the soundtrack of our lives. He was the soundtrack of our generation. But it's basically true. I'm sure I am not going to be the only one who makes that observation, but it is true. And this is why I wanted to do this episode with you, because we are of course, different generations, as I am old and you are young. But I think it's going to be interesting to go over John Williams, to go over the soundtracks and the certain individual tracks that we enjoy, because they're going to be from so many different movies, some that are 50 years old and some that came out 20 years ago and some that came out 5 years ago. But yeah, that story I told at the beginning was true. Whenever we drive, my wife and I, and you know, because she's your cousin,
I do.
she usually hates what I'm listening to, because it's usually something that was recorded in the 70s and she doesn't want to hear it, and then she tells me I'm old. So I figured that she would be happy that I was listening to the John Williams playlist.
Yeah.
But I think right before the Superman theme came on, it was Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Raiders March, and she said to me, "Oh, this one, I hear this one all the time." And I'm like, okay. So then I had the Superman theme, which I understand you could put any two syllables in there, but it does, I think, because it's John Williams and because he's so brilliant, it gives you the feeling that what you're hearing is the music saying Superman when it's driving at you. But yes, of course, she had to be cold and calculating and tell me that no, that it could have been. Well, I mean that in a good way. I just mean I mean that she is the intellectual of the two of us, and I am the pop culture maven. But so when I talk to you about this episode, I always want to come at it from a different kind of way. Did you watch the John Williams documentary on Disney Plus?
I've seen it all the way through. I've seen parts.
Oh my goodness! No, it's very good. It's very good. You will enjoy it.
Yes.
But one, I wanted to talk to you because you are a musician, and tell me, because I would get it wrong, but I wanted to have you on because you can appreciate this coming from not only your standpoint as a fan of the movies that John Williams has done the soundtracks for, but also as a fan of just him, the technical aspects of it. I think, am I saying it right? Like the technical aspects of what he would do. So what exactly do you play? Because I totally forget. You're lucky that I remember. Remember my kids play the bass.
Yeah, so I have played cello for probably over 20 years at this point now. And actually, while I was thinking back through, picking out pieces to talk about and thinking about my connection to John Williams too in other ways, I'm pretty sure, I want to say it was in high school. I was probably in high school, and we did a concert with one of the orchestras I was a part of that definitely included some of his music. So that was really cool too, because that was probably the first time I really played it. And that's a whole different experience than actually just sitting and listening to it or watching it in a film. And I had the honor and the joy of getting to attend his 90th birthday concert at the Kennedy Center a couple years ago now. So that was really neat. Like, he was in the room, he conducted at the end. A bunch of these actors were there to talk about how wonderful of a person he is, and just to see all the footage of the films and the moments that he's been a part of was really touching. And it was really cool to see live too and hear all these, iconic scores in real time. But yeah, so I've been a cellist for 20 years, and at least I'll leave it at that. So
yeah, I'm very jealous. I've never been, and they're kind of gaining popularity right now. I know in Philly, I live right outside of Philadelphia, but at the Mann Music Center in Philadelphia, it's an outdoor concert venue. So in the summer, they do a lot of different concerts. But they have done, I think it was maybe it was postponed, and then they did it later because it wouldn't have been in 2000, because that would have been during the pandemic. But they did an Empire Strikes Back, where you watch the movie and they do the music live.
Yeah.
And I've seen a couple, not been to see, but I've seen advertisements for Lord of the Rings, which obviously isn't John Williams, but are scores that I would love to hear live. So that would have been really cool, just to go to the Kennedy Center to see anything, but to see the John Williams. So he did come and conduct at the end.
Yeah, at the end it was. I'm sure this is not the only time they've done this kind of setup, but yeah, at the very end he came up and he conducted the Imperial March. So that was very cool. Yo-Yo Ma performed, which was also special. It was the first time I'd seen him live. He's another very famous cello player, if you don't know. So he did the theme from, I think it was Schindler's List. I think was the one he did. But yeah, it was really, really neat. They had a whole selection of pieces, and some of them had, clips from the film. Some of them were just played outright. But yeah, it was really, really cool to see it all live. And I haven't done like a full movie where they have done the score, but that's on my list at some point. I know around here they do it in Richmond, and Harry Potter's come through a few times in some of those. So maybe at some point I will get to one of those. But yeah, the concert was really neat.
Yeah, one of the things with John Williams, like you just said, they play some of the clips behind it. I think with John Williams especially, he probably doesn't need clips for most of the themes that they'll play. People are going to automatically know what the theme is or what the track is.
For sure.
But like I started to say before we got off on me being jealous of you getting to see John Williams live, I didn't want to just do a podcast where we said, okay, so this was Jaws, and he did Jaws for Steven Spielberg, and then he did Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and then he did Star Wars. I think with John Williams, like we were joking in the beginning about him being the soundtrack for people's lives, I truly do think that. For me, who is 50 years old, and for you, who is significantly younger, you
think, but yes.
Both of us have never known a world where John Williams' music wasn't there playing in the background of a movie, playing in the background of a TV show, just playing in the background of our heads because it's stuck in our heads.
Yeah.
And enriched our lives in ways that I don't think a lot of musicians, whether they be classical musicians, whether they be rock musicians, pop musicians, can say.
Yeah.
I think John Williams is somebody who has transcended just creating soundtracks. And he is the one who I always call, like, my wife. She's getting a lot of play on this podcast. My wife, who is a normie. She's a normie. She doesn't know about all this kind of stuff, but she knows who John Williams is.
Yeah.
I don't think she would know if you said, oh, Hans Zimmer. Now, I know who Hans Zimmer is. You probably know who Hans Zimmer is. Howard Shore, we mentioned Lord of the Rings. I don't think my wife would know who that is, but John Williams, yes, of course.
Yeah, everybody knows.
You're going to go on Apple and you're going to pull up a John Williams playlist. She plays classical music when she's at home working sometimes, and she even said, yeah, I'll pull up John Williams stuff and play some of his tracks.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to do with this podcast was not just go through each soundtrack, but have us pick a few of the individual tracks that have affected our lives in some way over the years, and then discuss those and use those as a jumping off point to talk about the movies, to talk about other soundtracks and other tracks of his. And I'm sure we'll talk about individual soundtracks and what our favorite soundtracks in a whole are. But yeah, I was excited that you were going to come on just because I like to talk to you, but also because I knew that you would appreciate this on the different levels that I wanted someone to. Not just, like I said, not just for the craftsmanship that he obviously has, but also for what these tracks inspire in us, and then how we pass them on to the people we love. So I want to get started. I want to talk about some of these tracks. So you are the guest, so I want you to go first. So we picked a few. It doesn't have to be. I think I said 5 in the beginning. It doesn't have to be 5. You were messaging me worried that you were picking more. But I mean, this is what you have when you have John Williams. There's always going to be like, well, I want to pick this one too. Believe me, I had to narrow it down. But then in the back of my head, I thought, oh, but I could put this on here because I do have a good story about this, and I do listen to this. So yeah,
I'm shocked that we didn't overlap. That was
so am I. But it's interesting too, because I do think that backs up. You're always looking for a hook for an episode, or for a hook for how you're going to bring people in. But I think it does really back up that it spans generations. You're going to have somebody like me, like I said, who is old, who of course I'm going to have Star Wars stuff on there because that's what I grew up with. But I also have more of his recent work on here. And then you're going to have you, who is a Harry Potter fan. That is your generation. And you're also going to have stuff from the prequels, because that's also your generation. I don't want to give away what's going on. So I do think that's interesting. And that is also why I wanted to talk to you. Believe me, I could have a bunch of people who I've known for years who are big time Star Wars geeks, somehow even bigger than me, and we would all pick the same tracks from all the first 3 Star Wars because we're big nerds. And that would be boring. I'd rather do this. And it made me go back reading some of yours and say, you know what, I need to listen to this again. And just going through his work, listening for the past couple of weeks on Apple, going into other soundtracks that I knew some of the tracks, because you're going to watch a movie in the last 50 years, you're going to hear John Williams, even if it's not Star Wars or Raiders of the Lost Ark or Jurassic Park, and just say, okay, let me go into the Lincoln soundtrack and hear what it sounds like. And you always know it's him, but he also still manages to bring something new, I think, to everything he does.
Yeah,
it's distinctively him, but it's also something that you can enjoy and be surprised by, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I was just thinking the exact same thing. I think he's one of the few where it's clearly him without ever sounding like a repeat, and I think that's really brilliant. And we'll talk about this more, I'm sure, but one of the reasons I think it's interesting, I chose a lot of the prequels, particularly with the Star Wars pieces. A lot of it does hark back to the original 3 films. There's a lot reused, a lot of material that comes across, and that's something that I think is really beautiful about what he does and how he foreshadows within his music and all these sorts of things. But yeah, it's John Williams without it ever sounding like, oh, this is the same thing I heard 20 years ago, and 20 years from now I'll hear the same thing. So but yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and that's one of the cool things with him being able to do the original 3 and then come back for the prequels and then come back for the sequels, and also do a few of the TV shows. He did the theme for Obi-Wan, I do know that. But he gets to reference himself, and he gets to that. His music is telling the story in those movies also. Yeah. And that's what you're looking for. There's not many movie series, I mean, obviously, that get to span that long. And like you said, in the prequels, you get to hear foreshadowing of things mixed in. And believe me, I can remember sitting for those prequels and hearing bits of the Imperial March, hearing bits of the Darth Vader theme, hearing bits of the Yoda theme, and not just geeking out because I'm hearing them, but knowing why he is doing that in the music. And having a deeper appreciation. And that's what he's always done. I mean, Spielberg and Lucas have said, without John Williams, and they mean it, their movies would not be as successful as they are. I mean, Lucas has said it with the original Star Wars, that they knew, they were getting near the end and the special effects still weren't done. He was putting in footage of World War II fighter plane battles because they didn't have the special effects for the Death Star run. And people were watching the daily saying, this is going to be a disaster. We don't know what it's going to be. And he said, we went to go show it to 20th Century Fox, but we had John Williams music in our back pocket. And we knew that at least that was going to elevate it. And people would say, okay, this is going to be something good. Spielberg has said it with Jaws.
Yeah.
That the movie would not be nearly as effective if you didn't have John Williams music. And it's true.
Yeah, he's really defined so much. And I've said it before. I know there's probably countless people you could, account it to too. But without him, I don't think any of the things that we consider possible in film and the stories that we believe would have existed. He really, from the moment the music starts, you're really in a whole different space because of him. And I think I'm sure you've seen on social media, people will swap out like the soundtrack on a film clip and talk about how it changes the whole attitude, even if you don't change the script or anything else. And it's wild and it's funny, but the reality is it's the truth. And I don't think any of these movies, moments, characters would hit nearly as hard as they do without his work. And I think that's what's really special about what he does.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be just a whole episode of us waxing poetic about John Williams.
Yes.
But as I said, you are the guest, so I want you to go first. So give me one of your first choices for one of your John Williams tracks.
Yeah. Let's start with. Let's just go with Duel of the Fates. So that's from the episode 1 of Star Wars. So,
we always find ourselves coming back to talk about the prequels somehow in episodes.
Get this out of the way, right?
No, it's not bad to get Duel of the Fates out of the way. Go ahead. I have a story about Duel of the Fates, but I want to hear how Duel of the Fates has affected you.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it's one of the most iconic pieces to have come from the entire series, but particularly the prequel trilogy. So for those who don't know, I guess we should give like a snap of where it is in the movie. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So most of it occurs in the big fight, in the first episode, Darth Maul and Qui-Gon and everything. So that's all happening. It is referenced later in some of the other movies, which I think is really cool. Again, we're talking about like how he carries themes and, pieces of music. So it appears in episode 2 when Anakin's looking for his mom.
Yep.
Which is cool.
Well, it doesn't end cool for Shmi Skywalker.
The use of the music is cool. And when you talk about one of the other pieces that I wanted to highlight, which was Battle of the Heroes, which is part of the fight scene in episode 3 when they're on Mustafar. He wanted something to mimic Duel of the Fates, the choral aspects, the feel of the music, but it was tragic, right? Because we're dealing with a fight between two brothers, essentially. So anyway, it's just amazing to me how like he's able to put together a piece that's going to carry through at least 3 films and tell this story. But yeah, I just think Duel of Fates it just feels really epic, which is what, from the research I've done on the piece itself, is what he wanted, and it came across. There's a big choir. There's lots of heavy strings.
Yeah,
it's really
that
beautiful.
was something I wanted to bring up with Duel of the Fates. Is that to me in '99 when the build up to Phantom Menace was going on, and they released this on MTV as a video. So the internet was around, but it wasn't like it is now where you just say, oh, the new Superman trailer is out. I'm going to go to YouTube and go check it out. This was still the time where I'm going to watch MTV because I know they're going to show clips from the movie for the video. But this was, do you remember TRL, Total Request Live on MTV? I think it was #1 for a couple of weeks on Total Request. This is how big the hype for episode 1 was. But I remember hearing it, this doesn't sound, at first I thought it doesn't sound like Star Wars. It sounds like something different. And I think that's a good thing because everything shouldn't, you want to evolve. You don't want it just to be the same old, which I don't think John Williams does. But at first I thought, it sounds different. I don't know. Is really something that should be in Star Wars, but seeing it in the context of the movie, as you just said, the epicness of it, and it continues as a running motif throughout the 3 movies. It's become iconic now. And just that choir, to hear that choir, and it's not like we're giving away spoilers for a 26-year-old movie. It's during the Obi-Wan I almost said Anakin, Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, and Darth Maul fight at the end when Qui-Gon ends up being killed. But it fits Darth Maul also, just that whole look and the way. I think it always fit his style of fighting because he was so brutal. That was one of the things with. I always say with episode one is my least favorite of all of the movies, but that lightsaber fight is one of the best lightsaber fights, and he's just brutal the way he is. I mean, it's not, it's a Star Wars movie. It's not people being, there's stuff will be cut off, but you won't really see anything. So it's not people being, ripped apart and their organs lying on the ground. But I always felt that Darth Maul's fighting style was meant to be very visceral. Yes. And there's something like driving in the way that music is that fits his character very well. And I do like that it continues through the original, the prequels, where it's Anakin going to find the Sand People, to find his mother, and it's right before he slaughters the Sand People. So it's again kind of the brutality of it, and then like you said, it comes bits and pieces of it come up in the final lightsaber fight between Obi-Wan and Anakin, which is then they're basically their friendship being ripped apart. So that I do like that it's brought up again there. So I just remember it was all over the place in 1999 with the build up for the Phantom Menace, and I would watch it on MTV. And like I said, at first I bought the soundtrack, which I shouldn't have done because for some reason they gave away that Qui-Gon died. One of the tracks on the Phantom Menace soundtrack is Qui-Gon's Noble End. So I was like, well, I guess Qui-Gon dies, which I kind of figured. I mean, considering he's never mentioned in the original three. I do want to go in and edit when Obi-Wan appears to Luke on Hoth and says you will go to see Yoda, the Jedi Master who not trained me, but who instructed me. And then he would stop and start to fade away and then say, well, actually it was Qui-Gon who instructed me, but he got killed by this guy named Darth Maul. And then Yoda was training the Padawan, so then that's how he trained me. And Luke would just be like collapsing in the snow.
That would have made it so much better.
Yes. I could see how they might have wanted to edit out that dialogue.
And speaking of dialogue, I think that's something else that's unique about this, because the fight scene itself, because they don't know each other, right? There's not a ton of dialogue, and so to have the choir bringing some of that in, I think is really
it was just something so different, I felt. And listening now as I was doing my research, which meant just listening to different John Williams soundtracks for Saving Private Ryan, there was he had a lot of choir work in there also, and that was 98, so it was the year before. So maybe that was something he had just started, because I don't feel like in any of his earlier ones that he really had a lot of choir. So maybe it was something that he just, I was going to say he's into, but maybe it was something he was working with, and he decided, well, I want to do something different. And it definitely was. It was something that sounded different, but it drew attention to the movie. And it's something, I think, with how divisive those three movies are, I think that's something that most fans can agree on is one, John Williams' work in all three.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.
Something that most fans can agree on is one, John Williams' work in all three is still mind-blowing, and two, that Duel of the Fates is one of the iconic Star Wars themes. I would think.
And again, I think it's neat that it wraps through, and we were talking about how it, shows up in other places. And one of the other places that it does show is in episode 3. During the big fight scenes, we've got Anakin and Obi-Wan fighting, but then you've also got Yoda and Sidious going. And in the moments that the film is focused on Yoda's fight, there's actually components of Duel of the Fates that shows up layered into those pieces too. So I think I just think it's really neat how careful he was to bring all those components together. And a lot of the fight scenes, and I made a note of this, I know I messaged you too, but actually a lot of the fight scenes, he overlaps themes and overlaps pieces. And I just, again, it's very intentional. And as an average viewer, like, we're not going to go in and see it the first time and go like, oh, I recognize this and this. I mean, most of us aren't, right? So when you watch it again and again and again, you have the time to really give the attention to the piece. We were like, oh, there's that theme, and oh, there's this piece. And I also, as a sidebar to all of this, I think that's really important when you talk about film scores. To me, film scores should never be the most important part of the scene, right? They're meant to support, but it's so amazing to me that they support in a way that if you take them away, they change everything. But in the moment, I don't want it to take over. You know what I mean? And so I think that's really incredible. And the mastery that has to be involved to make that possible is just mind blowing. And again, when you go back to like the intention behind what John Williams does, and I certainly can't speak to all of his intentions, but it's clear that he has thought really carefully about what these themes mean and who they represent and the stories they're telling. And so to see them woven together across multiple films, spanning decades in some cases, some of these themes, is just really, really neat.
Yeah, I think he definitely knows when to be bombastic and then when to pull back.
Yeah.
And like you said, the best soundtracks are the ones you don't notice until you go and listen to the soundtrack by itself. I don't think you want to. He knows how to not take over the movie, and just be another part that adds to the magic, and that's his magic.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
My first choice to illustrate knowing when to be subtle and then when to be bombastic is Leaving Home from Superman the movie. And I don't know why. I mean, obviously, as we said, we could just do a whole episode talking about the Star Wars theme, the Raiders of the Lost Ark March, the Superman theme, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, but that would be boring. I don't know why, but Leaving Home, it's always affected me from when I was a kid watching Superman the movie on Prism, which was our local cable station that I bring up every episode, and it still affects me now. It's the whole track is, it starts with young Clark Kent finding the piece of crystal that will eventually build the Fortress of Solitude. And it's right after his father has died. So he's feeling that great line in the movie where he says, all these powers and I couldn't save him. So he doesn't know what he's going to do. And then he finds the crystal and realizes that he has to go to the North Pole and throw it into the into the into the ground that's going to build the Fortress of Solitude for him. But it starts off very mysterious, and then it gets very, very quiet, and then I could see the scene as I'm talking about it. It's Richard Donner was just so amazing in doing this, because it's still the origin. You haven't even seen Superman yet, so you're supposed to be in Kansas. They filmed in, I believe, British Columbia, but you see all these wheat fields and all these fields, and his mom standing there, and he goes to tell her that he's going to go. That he's basically leaving home, hence the name of the track. And then the music. And when I say bombastic, I don't mean that in a bad way, but it just swells up and gets so huge, and it's when I say blasting, it's not blasting you away. It's just the whole emotion of the scene as he's telling his mother that he's leaving, and she knows, because that first Superman, it's basically the Moses/Jesus allegory. Also, he's saying, "I'm going now to start my mission." She knows he's going to leave and become Superman. Yeah. But his relationship with his mom and his dad has just died, and that music I actually have goosebumps right now because I'm seeing the scene and I'm hearing the music. I'm hearing the music play. So that's always been, whenever I go and pull up a John Williams playlist, that's one of the tracks I always look for to play. So that's something that it's one of the ones that's always stood out for me. And I think Superman the motion picture is one of his best soundtracks overall.
Yeah.
Because joking aside with the main march, I mean, what is that? I don't know if you've seen the new Superman, but they incorporate. You should. They incorporate bits and pieces of the Williams theme in the new theme. And like James Bond, I think the Superman theme is one that they just shouldn't ever change. Nothing against Man of Steel, because they were good soundtracks, but it's so associated with the character.
Yeah.
And that, again, just goes back to John Williams. I always say this, but I mean, I don't understand, and I'm not a musician, first of all, but I don't understand how you do Jaws and then say, okay, well, I also have Star Wars. Right there, there's two. You could just be like, yep, I did the Jaws soundtrack and Star Wars soundtrack.
Yeah.
There you go. But then he's like, well, hold on, I'm going to do Superman too. And you know what? I'll go and do Raiders of the Lost Ark also. Yep. And wait, I also did Close Encounters of the Third Kind. and I did 9 Star Wars movies. And hey, wait, I'm going to do Jurassic Park also. How do you keep coming up and with themes that are iconic, that now that theme for Superman defines the character, I think. I know it's, and again, going back to the generational part of it, yes, that was me growing up. But you have still a young kid, and I know when my kids were young, when you're playing with kids and you're making them fly on your knees or whatever, you're probably either humming to them or to yourself the Superman theme.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because it's a shorthand for superhero or flying. So that's what John Williams did. But the whole soundtrack of the whole Superman soundtrack, I think, it's a really great. It just encapsulates, like I said, just with this track, mystery and heroism and wonder, and that's everything. And alien. I've almost picked the Planet Krypton track, but I like it. I really like the beginning of it and I could see the scene for the movie where you see it's the beginning of the movie and they reveal what Krypton looks like. And it's also that mystery, but also that slightly alien vibe that he brings to it. And I just, it's amazing that's what, again, I can see it in my head, but that's the feelings I get from it. And he is able to, you can watch that movie with just the soundtrack isolated and totally understand what the filmmaker is trying to get across. But yeah, Leaving Home is something that has always, it just always stood out in my mind. It's one of the perfect combinations of visuals and music in a movie. So that was my I figured I'd go with one that wasn't Star Wars because there will be Star Wars later.
Yep. No, I think that's true, and I think that's similar to why I picked some of the Harry Potter pieces that I picked. So we'll go there, and I guess we'll circle back to Star Wars because otherwise we'll talk about that for another hour. So I picked 2 pieces from the Harry Potter films. Hedwig's theme, which is basically like the very first thing you ever hear when you watch the first few films, and I kept like, that has to be that. I double checked myself because I was like, I don't want to say that and be wrong. But I was like, no, it's like the very first thing you hear, right? And I like checked, but it's the first thing that opens the films, and it's so simple. Ultimately, from a musical standpoint, I mean, I say that, but I don't like actually play violin. But it's
easy. Come on, come on.
Yeah, just crank it out, guys.
He probably did, like on an afternoon, like there you go, it's done.
But it's so beautiful, and I think again, we've said this before, but it's like you hear the first few notes, and I'm, as somebody who grew up with these films and these stories, right? Like I'm instantly transported to that space, and there's no question that we're somewhere that's magical and full of wonder, and to do that with just a few notes and a few pieces of melody is, incredible. And I know we're just sitting here complimenting him, but I hear that, like you can sit there and say, I hear Leaving Home and I immediately see, the start of Superman and everything, but that's how I feel when I hear the music from Harry Potter. And, when you step into like the spaces in the parks and on the, all of those things, it's like, it's instant. Like okay, I'm in Hogsmeade. I'm outside Hogwarts. Like there's no question of where I am or what I'm doing. And it's really beautiful and it's not complicated. Even though it sounds like it is in some ways. I think that's another thing that he's great at. He can take something that could be ultimately very complex and probably ridiculous, frankly, and keep it very simple and powerful and delicate. Like, that one feels really delicate. And I had also mentioned, I think it's Harry's Wondrous World. So it's just another like suite that was written for the films, and it's used in a lot of the credits. But again, it's just, there's something about it that just feels so uniquely in that world. Like it wouldn't make sense in any of the other films he's done. It feels very, I don't know. I don't want to say British because I don't know that I could back that up entirely. But it does. It feels like very much like it was meant to be in these films that are, based in this area. And the castles, it just evokes those things. And as somebody who grew up on the films, it just feels like coming home in a way. And there's no, like, I'm not going to question anything that happens after this. Like, suspend the, reality, suspend the disbelief. And that's really what's unique about those tracks. Like I think of them and I can see the castle and I can see everything happening right away. So that was why I picked those. There's just, to me, there's a really emotional tug to them. No question about it. Like, I hear it, I know what it is, and I think that's really cool. But it's also neat. I think the music from those films is so subtle. Like, I don't know if you remember, but my cousin, when she got married 2 Octobers ago now, she used one of the songs from Harry Potter in her wedding ceremony. Like, that was what she walked down the aisle to. And so it's just really cool to like see that even when it's isolated, it's still really beautiful and powerful. And I think that's what's cool about it. So anyway, those were the reasons I picked those ones. I just think, to me, they're very iconic. Like, I can see the film sprouting up as I hear the music, and that's cool.
Well, that's not going to be the first mention of John Williams' music being used for a wedding. We will get to that in a little bit. But I do think I'm an old grizzled nerd. So the Harry Potter movies don't mean the same to me that they do to you. I've never read the Harry Potter books. Much to the chagrin. Well, just the first 5.
Well, yeah,
No, I know.
Yeah. So it's neat because the last 3 films I went in blind. I had
blind,
no idea what was going to happen, and that was wild. After having the other 5, I'd read the books. I knew it was coming. I knew every moment, and so to sit there and watch the things that happen in the last few films, I was just not prepared. And someday I will read them at some point. We have them. I just think I was in college and all that. Or close to it, and I just didn't get around to it. So, but I think that's the other thing. And I don't know if we had talked about, like, probably not, because we talked about Star Wars last time I was here. But Harry Potter was something that my family did together, right? I read the books. My dad read the books. My sister read a lot of them. I don't know if she read them all, but we shared the books. I remember them, going between bedrooms. We had 3 different bookmarks of them at times. We read the first few aloud. And I'm getting to the age with my son where I'm, hoping to do the same. And because they were important to me, they were a big part of my childhood. And then we saw the films. Like, that was something we did as a family. And so I think that's the other thing, that these pieces hold a lot of sentimental value across generations. And we've already said that, but I think, to think about, and you have more experience, if your kids are older, but to be able to start sharing these things is really cool. I mean, my son knows the Vader theme. He knows the Cantina band. Like, he knows things even if he hasn't totally lived in that world yet. And just like the Harry
Potter, it goes back to generations also. Yeah. Now that's between us, that's the youngest generation, and he still knows it. But I think what you're saying is true. The music becomes shorthand in a way. I saw a couple of the Harry Potter movies just because, my God, I mean, the first one came out 25 years ago now, which is crazy to think. But, so that was before I was married, before I had kids, and I was just going to the movies. Even though I didn't read the books, I mean, Harry Potter was such a phenomenon that you just went to see the music. And I went to see the movies. And I remember when they were making them and they announced that John Williams was doing the soundtrack. And I thought, oh, well, of course. I mean, you're going to have, they had already planned out, they're going to have, 8? How many movies did they end up making? 8 or 9?
Yeah, it's 8.
Something like that. 8. But, it's like you're going to have this epic series. You're going to go get John Williams, but he creates stuff that, for me, who is that not that I couldn't like it, because there's people my age who I'm sure read those books and love them, but for me, that's something that is not mine in the way that you feel it's yours, because it's something that you feel a personal connection to. It's still a shorthand of hearing that and saying, oh, that's Harry Potter, but it also invokes it's a shorthand and totally tells you what those movies are going to be about.
Yes. Yeah.
That, and like you said, listening to it, because I saw it and I saw the name, I saw Hedwig's theme, and I said, I think that's the owl, because I've only seen the movie. I've seen the movies like once or twice. I think I saw them in the theaters, and then we watched through them with the kids a couple years ago. So, this is like my wife watching Star Wars with me, where she's read the books, actually. She's more of a Harry Potter fan, but she knows more about it than I do. So I said, I think this is the owl. But I mean, basically, and you would know this more than me, isn't that considered kind of like the Harry Potter theme, though? Yeah. I know this scene, it's in the beginning when the owl is flying, because he's going to bring the note, right? It's saying that you're a wizard, Harry. So that's basically Harry Potter's theme. It's not called that, but that, to me, that's what I mean with shorthand. That's what I would consider, okay, that's Harry Potter.
Yeah. And again, it's the first thing you hear, and it's literally what plays
Mm-hmm.
as the movie begins. And so, yeah, to me, it's the biggest thing. And I went through a couple tracks trying to decide, and I was like, no, this is the one that I consistently come back to and say, this is Harry Potter. If I had to pick one and water it down, to this is the only one I could pick for this film, like that would be it without a doubt. And again, it's not to say the rest of it isn't iconic, and there's still some really beautiful scenes and really beautiful pieces of music he wrote. But yeah, I think that's the one that stands out as the most well-known from the film, and the most, like you said, you recognize and you know what it's from right away. And I think overall that's just something that he does really well too. I think about just the differences between that and some like the Indiana Jones stuff, and that's usually got a little more oomph to it in the sense that like he's somebody who runs and jumps and is exploring and being who he is, and Harry's not like that. Like it's softer in a sense, and
magical.
and yeah, and I think leading into kind of the talk about some of the Star Wars themes, the character themes, that's something that really stood out to me as I was listening back through a lot of these themes for these characters in particular are they're not heavy-handed. They're simple and they're straightforward, and the differences you hear, like if you were to just compare, and I'm looking right at my wall, Yoda's there and Vader's up there. Like if you were to just compare the two of them, right, the very difference in their themes and the music are obvious, but at the same time, it's just so well done. Like you listen to the differences, and I think that's something he does really well too. He can really bring the personality of a character into the space through his music, and then to be able to take that and modify it and change it around for different scenes and moments, and is just really cool. And so yeah, I mean, I'm rambling now, but
That's okay.
These feel really iconic and really specific to the characters, and yet they're all uniquely his is cool. So yeah, that's my Harry Potter.
You're bringing up Yoda, so I will give you my next selection as we go back to Star Wars is Yoda's theme.
Yes.
And I didn't know if I was going to pick that, or there's also Yoda and the Force, which is also a theme in Empire. It's from The Empire Strikes Back. But Yoda's theme to me, it's funny because it's so different than not the personality of the character, but looking at Yoda. I mean, now we've had Yoda for all of these years, so we all know the character of Yoda. But if you looked at Yoda for the first time, you wouldn't think that would be his theme. But then when you do think about it, it totally sums up his character in that track. The mysticism of Yoda, the playfulness of Yoda, especially in Empire, where you first see him and he's acting the way he is because he's testing Luke. Yeah. And I remember I watched Empire about a month and a half ago with Xander, my son. And I have the despecialized editions on Blu-ray with, they don't have all the added stuff, but Empire famously was always the one that they changed the least because it's the greatest movie ever made. But he's watching it and he's like, well, Yoda's acting really weird because he's watched them all, but he's now watching the prequels a lot. And he's also coming from it as somebody who's seen all of these movies. He didn't have to wait 16 years and then say, oh, Yoda fights with a lightsaber. What the? I never expected this. To him, Yoda's always fought with a lightsaber. So he's saying, why is Yoda acting so weird? And I was saying to him that, well, you have to realize, like, he was testing Luke and he was trying to see how he was going to react and all that kind of stuff. But the theme, I think, totally sums up Yoda in that movie. And it also, we're going to go to a common theme with all these. I remember watching it as a kid, and now I think about it now when he talks to Obi-Wan, when Luke finally realizes who Yoda is, and he says to him, I can't train him. And I now as an adult, when I see him say to him, a long time, this one have I watched, all his life, he's looked away to the future. And I think about me and the way, and I said to Xander, I was like, that is totally me. I said, I wish, you always want to be, he always asked me, who's your favorite Star Wars character? And I'm like, Han Solo. I just like Han Solo. It's obvious, he's not like the only character I like, but I'm like, yeah, do I wish I could be Han Solo? Yes, but I know I'm not. I'm probably more Luke because that's how I always was. Instead of just focusing on what I was doing, I was like, oh yeah, but I could be doing this and this would be so cool. And to hear that music, and it just makes me it makes me think of what Yoda is trying to convey to him. And in the context of the movie, where he is probably thinking, okay, we already screwed this up with Anakin. And now
We can't do it again.
this stupid backwoods farm boy is our only hope, who's whining about power converters and that the soup is too hot that I'm eating.
Yep.
So it kind of mixes in with Yoda and the Force, because I also think that it's shorthand. It creates shorthand for the Force. One of the things, and I feel like it's always going to come back to the prequels. You and I are talking, but one of the things I will not change my stance with prequels is I don't like midichlorians. I don't like, the Force should not have to be explained.
Yeah.
And that speech that Yoda gives Luke when he tells him what the Force is just the perfect encapsulation of what the Force should be, and the way he says it, and the music behind it that is also, again, elevating that theme. So I know it's parts of Yoda and the Force and Yoda's theme, and it's at the end when John Williams always does this with Star Wars, when it goes into the end credits, and he usually gives little bits and pieces of all the themes that he's done. The Yoda theme comes in. It's a little bit faster in the end, like everything is that he does when he does the end credits. But yeah, I think it's so amazing that it sums up the whole character and just lets you see all the different sides and shadings of Yoda in Empire. And at that time, that was a character that you hadn't spent so much time with. So you didn't know that much about him. So again, like I had said with shorthand with Harry Potter, that was shorthand for Yoda, space wizard, mystical, playful, can be a little grumpy sometimes. But it's also going to explain to you the Force. It's basically like a parent.
Yes, yeah. And I think what's nice about Yoda's theme is that, like from a musical standpoint, it's very simple, but it also gave John Williams a lot of room to play in all of the big moments that came with that character. To hear it drawn out, to hear it faster, to hear it when he's dying. Like, there's a lot of things that he was able to do with just a simple theme to create those variations. And I think that's what I love about him, that those minor motifs and themes that we hear musically return. And again, to like the person watching for the first time, listening for the first time, you're not going to notice all of that, right? And that's, again, what's great about what he does. He's not hitting you over the head with it, but it's there. And to be able to take something really, really simple and allow it to transform so many times is cool. And to speak to the character every time, right? To take that shorthand and allow it to really serve the story, I think is what's cool. And with Yoda's theme in particular, especially because it is one of the more simple ones from a musical standpoint.
So what do you got next?
So let's see. Well, you know what? Let's just go with character themes. So I also picked...
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Let's see. Well, you know what? Let's just go with character themes. So I also picked the Imperial March, which is essentially Darth Vader's theme.
Yeah.
I remember watching one of the prequels, I don't know, in the last few years. And again, I've watched these movies for many years. And it finally, like, I was in a place where I was actually letting, it all wash over. And I was like, oh my gosh, I hear Vader's theme. And it's so brilliant. And I was like, why did it take me this long to hear it? But, whatever. So I'm sure, but again, it was really cool to see it, because we obviously knew it was going to come. Like, we all know what's happening. But to just hear it show up musically was really neat. I just think it's, again, a really simple piece of music. It's a march. It's when you, play it, perform it, it's like 2 minutes or less. It's not a long piece of music. But again, you listen to it and you're like, oh yeah, that's him. It's like very clearly him. It was the piece that I got to see John Williams conduct. Like I said, he came out and he conducted the orchestra at the Kennedy Center. I think it was the National Symphony, must have been. So that was really cool. And I'm like sobbing through it, 2 minutes of this march that nobody should be sobbing through because it's, this tyrant. But, again, we know I have an unhealthy interest in the characters, so whatever. Judgment aside, I just think it's really neat. It's very powerful, right? It feels very mechanical, which makes sense, right?
It's a good observation. Yeah.
And you compare it to like Yoda's theme, which is much more lyrical, I would say, right?
And earthy, yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And then you've got Vader, and it's very structured, very specific, very mechanical.
And the funny thing is, and I'm sorry, I mean, I'm cutting you off. I think people don't realize that it's not in A New Hope.
Right.
It's in Empire.
Yeah.
Thank God and I do remember this in 97 when they re-released all the originals and they were adding stuff that on message boards, fans were saying, well, maybe they'll add the Imperial March into A New Hope. And I was like, just don't. Like, I mean, it's iconic, obviously, but there's no need to add it into there because it fits that Vader, in all honesty, in A New Hope is an underling to Grand Moff Tarkin. So, and obviously he became the iconic, I mean, he's the shorthand for villainy. And just like this theme is shorthand for evil and tyranny.
Yep.
But you don't need to add it into A New Hope. It fits so much better in what Empire is and with the whole vibe of that movie.
Yeah.
But I keep bringing up shorthand. It's like you said. I mean, yes, the Imperial March, as I said with Superman, where you can do shorthand for with your kids, or I don't know, maybe not your kids. I don't know what else people are doing. But if you're making pretend, I'm not going to say that I haven't made pretend I fly when I'm like a 50-year-old. But when you're making pretend you're flying, you hear or you're humming that Superman theme. It's a shorthand for evil. It's a shorthand for oppression, but it's also just so damn cool. Also, I mean, the Imperial March is you bring up the Beatles, you bring up the Rolling Stones, who have songs that will live forever and songs that will always be associated with them. The Imperial March is something that will live far longer than any of us and will still be played at football stadiums, will still be played. Hell, maybe it'll be played by our government. You never know with the way things are going right now. Sorry, I didn't mean to get political.
No, you're good. Well, I mean, but that's the thing too. Like, I mean, we talked about this on the other episode, and we're not going to go down that rabbit hole necessarily. But again, these films are inherently political, and that's a statement, right? Like, that's a statement about that character and the place that he serves in the story and the world and the universe, and so. And it's so funny that we say, you think of that, you think of tyranny and oppression. And, I have a fond memory of my son a couple of years ago, and I said, pick up your toys, and we put on the Imperial March, and that was
sure.
And, but he knows that that's Vader's, and he hasn't seen the Star Wars films. We just started the Marvel films with him. That's what he wanted to start with for now, and I was like, that was fine. I think I wanted to be a little older anyway to understand a lot of the politics behind the Star Wars. I think that'll allow some good discussions when he's bigger. But he knows exactly who that is when we play it. And that's the power of it, right? I mean, when I think back to that concert, so I attended with my parents and my sister and her husband. I don't know if they were married at the time, doesn't matter. Anyway, but I remember sitting in the Kennedy Center and you're looking around and you're just seeing generations, right? Like you're seeing, but everybody knows that one, right? You may not be able to detail any of his other films necessarily, and I guess you could say that a lot of his themes, right? In general, like you said, Jaws, Superman, there's a lot of things he's done, but that is one that, you hear it, you know who that is, you know what it's for, even if you're not the biggest.
And you know what it means. And to your point, in the prequels, that was something you were waiting for. And I do like, it's not too on the head when he does it.
No.
But he also does it, it's not in the same way. You hear it played with the piano. It could be a light kind of way because it's meant as sadness, because this is the beginning of when he's falling in. And just to hear, I think at the end, because I'm such a dork, especially the Attack of the Clones soundtrack, I think is very good. And the last, from the end, when you see the clone army into the finale, and then it does all the themes for the end credits, I think it ends with the piano just lightly playing the ding, ding, ding. And just the way, I can't do it, obviously, but...
And it's subtle, right? It's not meant, again, like you say, you're not being whacked over the head with it, but it happens a few times, and it happens more and more throughout episode 3. You start hearing it overlapping. You hear it in the fight scenes. You hear it in his betrayal. You hear it in all of these things, and it's not the theme because he's not Vader yet, but you know without a doubt that's what's happening.
Because you're a fan just the way I am, when you hear it and you know what's going to happen, it also makes you say, oh, that I don't want this to happen. Why can't this happen differently?
Every time it's going to be different. It's going to change. It's not going to end the same way no matter what they're telling me, and I think that's the other thing about that theme, because when you get to the end final version of Vader's theme, right, like when you actually hear the march, it's so final, I guess is the best way to put it. There is no like messing around with it, and I think that's when you think about the foreshadowing and leading up to that moment, right? Like there was no other option. I was always going to end this way. And I'm pretty sure I've said that on the other episode. Like it was always going to end this way. And the finality to me of that theme, like to me, again, it's like very militant, very regimented. There's no option. Once you hit it, you hit it. It doesn't change again. And I think that's what's,
that's the music. That's the magic of John Williams right there. He's making an oppressive, tyrannical regime cool for everybody, for multiple generations to hum to themselves and to get pumped up about.
Yeah.
Way to go, John. Way to go, John Williams.
So that was, I don't know, that one's just like, to me, I think John Williams, especially I think Star Wars and I, that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Sure.
And so that was the reason I picked that. And the fun story about David, my son, knowing who it is, knowing what it's for, marching around and picking up. That was the day he would build like TIE fighters and random things out of magnets on our door and stuff. Like it's just interesting. He may not really get it yet. He may not have seen the films. He may not know, but like he's still in the world. And
that just means you're doing parenting right. But staying on the Star Wars, staying on the, I was going to say the Star Wars theme, as we're bringing up John Williams. Staying with Star Wars, my next choice was the throne room / end credits from A New Hope. Mm-hmm. And I have always, with the throne room, when my wife and I'm saying my wife and I, and it's not like you don't know who my wife is because it's your cousin, but for people who are listening who don't know who my wife is, my wife and I, when we were planning our wedding, we were trying to figure out what was going to be the music that we were going to walk into the reception to. Yeah. And I wanted the throne room. And she said yes. But I remember this was 2000, we got married in 2006. So it was kind of before, iTunes and everything was out there, but it wasn't like it is now. Yeah. And we were talking to the DJ. I can't remember because I was discussing this with Tammy this weekend. I said, I wanted to have the throne room. And she said, yeah, well, the DJ didn't have it, but I know I had it on CD. So I don't know how we did not use the throne room. We ended up using the Cantina Band music, which is actually better for walking in for a wedding reception. But the throne room, to me, the end credits speak for themselves. It's the end credits to A New Hope. It's the first movie. As I mentioned when we were talking about Yoda's theme, that, when he does the end credits, he usually brings up all of little bits and pieces of the themes that he sprinkled in throughout the movie. But the throne room, I think, and getting back to when I said bombastic, it's not a bad thing. I don't mean it in a way that is derogatory toward John Williams, because I think he knows when he needs to be bombastic. And with this, it's the end of A New Hope. It wasn't called A New Hope then. It was called Star Wars because they didn't know that there was going to be 9 movies and various spin-off movies and TV shows and a whole billion-dollar industry that was going to spawn from this one thing that George Lucas started writing 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah. So this is the end of the movie. You might never see these characters again, and you're seeing them get medals. They blew up the Death Star. Yep. Evil has been defeated, and just that, when the doors open and you see Han and Chewie and Luke standing there and you hear that starting, and you see all the people gathered there looking at them and standing up, and they don't salute them, but basically that's what it is. And Chewie roaring out, and they all turn around, and Princess Leia and you see R2 come walking onto the stage because he had gotten hit by the laser blast. And again, as a 4 or 5-year-old, I probably didn't know if R2 was alive or not. And you see him standing next to 3PO, who's all shined up and looking nice. And it just fits that scene so well. It's that feeling of victory, of joy. These 3 now are friends. They've all discovered one another. 4, I'm leaving Chewie out again, just like he didn't get a medal. I'm leaving Chewie out, so I'm sorry. These 4 are all, sorry, Chewie, are all friends. And it just leaves you, I can imagine, because I don't remember. I was only 3. I wasn't even 4 yet when Star Wars came out. To be sitting there in that theater and to just have witnessed something that you had never seen before put on film, and to have this as the last not only images, but the last things you hear, because there's no dialogue except for Chewie roaring out.
Yeah.
So John Williams is the one who is playing you out, basically.
Yes.
And it just leaves you, it must have left you, you could see why it became the biggest movie of all time, because it must have left you with, oh my God, I got to go see that again. Like, I am pumped. I mean, it just leaves you pumped knowing, like, hell, they just blew up the Death Star. Yeah, baby. Let's go see this again.
Yeah, and I went through, and I made a playlist of everything I knew we were going to talk about and listened to it a few times over the last few days. And, when this one came up, it was like, I was just driving or whatever, listening to it. I was like, oh my gosh, yeah. Like, it was just it's so deeply ingrained. And as someone who, again, like, we talked about this, prequels are where I prefer to, sit when I'm going to sit and watch Star Wars. But like, my body and my brain knew this, like, it knew what it was for in those moments, and all those feelings that you're describing, having seen it, like, immediately come. Yeah. You feel pumped. You feel like, yeah, we're going to, go save the universe. And again, like, I think that's the power of this music, right? Like, and music in general, is something our brain holds on to, right? Like, it's really cool. And I could do a whole side tangent about like how powerful it is when you talk about, Alzheimer's and dementia and the things that memories that can be pulled from music. But this is why, like, it connects so many parts of your brain. And yeah, I just thought it was really cool. I was like, oh, you'll see, refresher of what this was, just because you don't pay attention to the titles the same way and everything. And I was like, immediately came on. I was like, oh, yeah, I know exactly what this is, where it's from, my body just knew. So I think
it was the same thing with me with Hedwig's theme. I was like, okay, I think that's the Harry Potter theme song, but I'm not sure. Yeah, when with some of these, and again, as a big nerd, I know most of the names of the songs, but yeah, I think this is one, like you just said. Then when you hear it, you're like, oh yeah, and then it evokes that feeling, and like you said, with seeing all the different, the moms and dads with the kids and with your son. It's just that he has a way of, that's why I think this episode is so interesting, because it's not just saying John Williams is good. He's really cool. Like, this is great. No, it's about, oh my God, I heard this and I wanted to let my son hear this because it's so awesome. And it makes you, and I remember when I was sitting there and I saw this for the first time, it's like you said, you're in a car and you hear it and you're just like, oh yeah, this is what this is. And it gives you a little bit of a jump. I do believe, like I said, it wasn't me because I was too little, but I would bet you that you would talk to somebody who saw this for the first time and heard that music being played out and just walked out probably into the sunlight, and your world is totally changed. And that theme is probably the last thing you remember hearing, because that was it as you're walking out of the theater. But your life is different now, and that music is a part of it.
Yeah.
And it's something you're never going to forget.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's neat. I love that about his music in general. And, it's like a little boost of confidence, or, I heard the Jurassic Park theme and now, like, oh yeah, I can go like handle some dinosaurs, like, no big deal. Like, I want to go explore, I want to go, to Hogwarts. Yeah, I can get a wand and cast spells. Like, I think that's what's really neat about it. And I remember that with the concert when we went, I was an emotional wreck that whole night, which frankly is no surprise if you know me, but I think it was just amazing to sit and see the impact and longevity of his career. And again, like, neither one of us have really ever lived in a world where there wasn't John, and even things that will live on beyond him. He wrote the theme for the Olympics, like, that will live on for years. Like, there's just little things that he's become so deeply embedded in, like, our society and our pop culture. And again, that's why we're having this conversation in the first place. But I think that's also what's cool, is like the emotional response that you have, and the confidence and the excitement. And you hear like the stuff from Indiana Jones, and you're like, yeah, I can go run from a giant rock, right? Like, I can handle it. But like, it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, and it goes back to the prequels, or it goes back to if you're seeing a trailer for like the last Indiana Jones movie, you're in the back of your mind, you're waiting for that music. That's what I think for it might have been for Temple of Doom. The trailer, I might be misremembering this, but I think, because this is, oh my God, like 40 years ago, so I was a kid. But I think it was either a commercial or the trailer. It just started with the march. You just hear dun 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 and you see like the silhouette of Indiana Jones, and that's
Yep.
the music is just as iconic as the silhouette, and it's just like, or it might have been for Last Crusade, where it's like the man in the hat is back. But I mean, that's all for that was all you have to do is play the music and show the silhouette, and like you have me. And that's what I'm talking about with Superman. You could do that with Star Wars. You could do it with Jurassic Park. I mean, you don't even need dialogue.
Yeah, and I think that's what's funny side story about the Indiana Jones theme. We were just last weekend. We went to Dave and Buster's around here with my parents, and we were sitting at lunch, and we got the like the headbands game where you have to like guess what's on the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, we have it on my phone because whatever. Anyway, so we were playing and we were waiting for lunch, and it was we were doing a Disney theme because that's about all David could handle. And my dad, who was guessing, or was supposed to be guessing, and it was like Indiana Jones. It was supposed to be about the ride in Disneyland, but we were just trying to get him to say Indiana Jones. And we gave him all these. I mean, we're talking like the ride,
boulder, hat, whip. Yeah.
And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And my mom, who cannot. She will not be mad I said this because she can't sing to save her life. She knows that. She starts trying to like hum part of the theme, and he immediately was like, "Oh yeah, Indiana Jones." And I was like, "But I mean, that's exactly what you're saying, right? Like it's so instantaneous, it's so iconic, and it's crazy. Like, can you imagine? Like, I just want to know how it feels to have written.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. Like joking around, just I mean, you're a creative person. I have tried to write. Like I think. Doing a podcast, it's helped me to get my creative juices out there and flowing. But to be able to, because don't you think that when you sit down and you do Star Wars and you do Jaws, doesn't it get into your head like, okay, I have to do something that's iconic? That's in the creative person's process. I don't know how. I know I've fallen victim to it where if I say, okay, I want to try to write something. And in the back of my head, I'm like, I want to write this and I want it to be something that is iconic. They talk to people who movies end up, I mean, again, we're talking about John Williams. So you can talk to George Lucas, who, didn't know that Star Wars was going to become what it became. But how do you, in the back of your head, I guess, you want it to be, but you can't talk yourself into it being that. But once you have a taste of that, once you do something that, and it's not an exaggeration, everyone knows, how do you sit down and do it again and say, okay, well, I just need to do this for, I brought up to you, I was listening to all of these soundtracks, and there is a soundtrack that John Williams did for a movie called Heart Beeps.
Yes, I listened to it.
That came out in 1981. It was it's not a really well-known movie. And it's with Andy Kaufman. It was a legendary bomb. It was critics hated it. Bernadette Peters is actually in it, and I can remember Bernadette Peters. I had a crush on her when I was like 6 or 7. I don't. She was in a lot of movies in the late 70s, early 80s. Yeah. But as I'm looking through these soundtracks and I see he did the sound, and I kind of, I've never seen the movie, but I kind of knew what it was just as it being like a legendary, really, really bad movie. Sure. So I was like, John Williams did the soundtrack to this? So I listened to it, and I don't know, you're a big Disney person too. It was fascinating though, because it sounded like the music from Epcot. It sounded like, It sounded like music that would either be playing at Epcot, or it sounded like music that people thought would be futuristic music, but from a 1979 perspective. If you get where I'm saying, I didn't hate it. I liked it for what it was. It's not like something that I will say to people, oh my God, this is an undiscovered gem of John Williams, but it's not terrible. It was just as a curio of a certain time.
Yeah, for sure.
And maybe just because I didn't know that he did the music for it. But yeah, at first I was like, this sounds like if you were making a movie about Epcot being haunted, it would be this. It was Epcot, but with a kind of sinister edge to it a little bit.
Very much like a time capsule. Like, this is what they expected the future to be then. Yeah, it was interesting. I didn't listen to a ton of it, but I listened to a little, and I was kind of like, oh, okay.
But that's what I mean. Like, how do you go from, you're like, okay, I did Star Wars, I did Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I mean, for him, is it just, oh, it's a job. Okay, well, they offered me this movie, so I'm going to do this. And I don't think John Williams has ever not given his 1 millionth,
Sure.
percent of effort.
Yeah.
Not saying about John Williams, well, not everything's going to be Star Wars. That kind of, it's like a backhanded kind of praise because, okay, yeah, well, I could say not everything's going to be Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark. John, we keep bringing this up. Yeah, he's got 7 or 8. He, like you said, for God's sakes, he did the music for the Olympics. So
yeah, and I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's different for everybody, and I imagine that it's kind of twofold. One, like, he knows that he has the ability, right? I think we talked about this, right? Like, nobody went into any of these films expecting them to be what they are now. So to some extent, yeah, it probably was like, hey, it's a job. Like, this is I gotta do my best and show up, and what happens, and when it's done, it's we move on or whatever.
I mean, you think about Jaws. Before Jaws, he was Johnny Williams. Because if you watch the documentary also, I mean, he had done a couple scores and he worked on Sugarland Express with Spielberg, which was his movie before his first feature film before Jaws, but he had done a couple jazz albums. So he had done TV work. So he was known as Johnny Williams before he became John Williams. So, I mean, you think maybe even in the late 70s, he's still, he's not iconic yet. He's well regarded, but he's not iconic. By 98, when Spielberg is like, okay, we're doing Saving Private Ryan. Okay, then it's okay. He's John Williams. Like I said, with Harry Potter, they probably thought, okay, well, we're doing this, and we know we need a theme. Oh, go get John Williams. Yeah. That's much like his music is shorthand for certain things. We need somebody who is going to bring gravitas to that. Shorthand is, okay, well, either go get a John Williams type or just go get John Williams.
Yeah. And I think the other piece to it all has to do with the stories, right? Like, you're not going to create epics from subpar stories and subpar characters. And I think, and again, I can't speak to it because I certainly don't have him on speed dial, but I imagine that having access to good stories, great storytellers in Spielberg and Lucas and the people that they worked with, right, I think probably gave way for the greatness that came, right? Like, you have to have something that holds up to these characters, that, rounds them out. And to do that, you have to have good characters in the first place. So,
well, I would think too, and you can speak to this better than I can, with conducting an orchestra and creating a soundtrack, it has to be, it's a collaboration. Excuse me. So you have to not only have people like Spielberg and Lucas who you're going to be working with.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Not only have people like Spielberg and Lucas who you're going to be working with that you're going to have good stories, you're going to have good direction, and that that the pictures that you're adding the music to are going to be framed correctly and are going to grab the audience. But you have to be able to work as a collaborator with not only the filmmakers, but with the musicians you're working with, and to be able to convey what you want to convey. So
yeah, 1,000%.
I think that speaks to him also, that he's been able to work this long and work with not only those two iconic filmmakers, but other filmmakers, is that he is able to collaborate with to get the means to the end to make something special, and to know that he's part of that whole machinery in creating what is going to eventually go out there to audiences.
Yeah, it's a team for a reason. And I think that all the pieces have to work together, and, seeing it come together, I'm sure is really cool. But being able to say, yeah, this is what we want. Because again, we talked about this earlier, right? Like, the idea that you can change the music of any moment in cinematic history and completely change the entire feel of a scene without changing anything else. And I think that's the power of music in general. But to then be able to do that and work with teams that are creating these moments too, like, I think, it's just probably a really special collaborative process, and probably really beautiful from that standpoint. I think that's cool about art. I love that it's collaborative. I love that, this wouldn't have been possible if you didn't have, Lucas and Williams, if you didn't have Spielberg and Williams, and so many other people, not to discount any of the other people.
Sure. Sure.
but you have to have the visionary, and you have to have the people that are pulling it together. And again, the right actors and the right designers and all of those things. Again, it's a certainly multifaceted project, but I think that's really cool. And so I guess a long-winded answer to the question of, like, how do you keep making epic after epic? I think you don't. I think you go in and do the best that you can in every situation with the right team and the right atmosphere, and you hope for magic. And I think, he's created a lot of magic ultimately. But all you can do is go in and hope for the best and put your best foot forward and, really try to do the story justice and hope for the best. So,
well, I want to bring up, speaking of magic, I want to bring up two of the one that you picked and one that I picked, because you picked the Jurassic Park theme, correct?
Yes.
And you said did you say you've not seen the movie?
I have not actually seen Jurassic Park.
No. I come not to denigrate you. So you picked Jurassic Park. I picked, one of my picks was Flying from E.T. Now, I've seen E.T. You're saying you've never seen Jurassic Park, but you picked that as one of yours.
Yes.
I have seen E.T. E.T., I might be one of the very few. I don't hate the movie, but I have no strong. I saw it when it came out, when I was 7 or 8, and I've seen it a couple of times since, and I understand where it stands in Spielberg's pantheon and where it stands in pop culture in general. It's never been a movie that's moved me. So I wanted to highlight you picking Jurassic Park and me picking Flying, because even in movies that one you've never seen and one that I've seen 2 or 3 times in my entire life, you can still find music and themes that John Williams has created that still touch you, even if you don't have the memories of the movies itself to back that up.
Yeah.
So why did you pick Jurassic Park, even just having never seen it, having never really don't have any history with it?
I honestly just love the opening, the French horn solo. I just think it's really beautiful. I've never seen the films, and I'm trying to remember back to that. I wish I had the program. I'm sure I do somewhere, but that concert that I did where, I told you we played a bunch of movie themes. So we actually, and I meant to look it back up before we got on here, but I know that we played, there's like a Cowboys theme that he wrote. And I feel like we might have played the theme from Jurassic Park, maybe. I don't know for sure. So I hesitate to say, like, I definitely played it. But I just feel like from a musical standpoint, I think it's always felt really accessible to me, and it's really beautiful solo, and it just feels, I don't know, it feels different to me than a lot of the other things that I'm super familiar with for him. So I think that's probably why it stands out. But yeah, I know it's just like something that speaks to me on a musician's level about it, and that was kind of why I leaned towards it. And even though, again, I've never seen the film, but the minute you hear that solo, you're like, there's dinosaurs.
I wanted to highlight both of these because I've seen all the Jurassic Park movies. I remember seeing the original Jurassic Park, and again, I feel like it was like, okay, Spielberg's doing it, and it's going to be involving dinosaurs. We gotta have John Williams do this. But all even with E.T. in the same vein, I like Jurassic Park, but it's never been my favorite series. Now, I just went and saw the most recent one with my 2 kids. Watching through the originals and then the newer ones with Chris Pratt, I remember the Jurassic Park theme was one of the first that I can recall Xander saying to me, "Oh, that's the Jurassic Park theme," that he remembered it, that he knew it. And I think with the Jurassic Park theme, again, even though I don't have that close relationship with the movie that I do with some of the other things that we've picked, he is the perfect guy to convey that not only wonder of, yes, now dinosaurs exist again, but also that understated kind of menace that you're going to have in the movie. And it's funny because the Jurassic Park theme, and I think maybe it's because the movie's out, but when you go on the John Williams on the list for Apple and you look at his songs, that's the number 1 song. I think they do it by what people are listening to. So I think that was 1, and then the Imperial March was number 2. So it's not a big surprise. But yeah, I've just always thought it does convey that, because I think of the scene, and I'm not giving away spoilers because there's dinosaurs in the movie, but there's a part in the original Jurassic Park where they're driving on the island and they come over a hill and they just see, you've probably seen when they show when they show montages of his music or Spielberg's movies, and you just see the one dinosaur, eating leaves off of a tree, and you just hear that theme, and it just makes you, this is how you would feel if you finally saw a dinosaur in front of you.
Yes.
And to tie that into E.T. with me, like I said, I've seen it a couple times. I lived through the phenomenon of E.T. That it's one of the first, because like I said, I was 7 or 8. So I remember when it was so big. I can remember driving over the bridge to go to New Jersey because there was no movie theaters close to where I grew up. So we used to go to the Deptford Mall in New Jersey. I can remember driving with my mom and my brother in our old Renault Alliance that we owned for a year because it was a clunker, driving over the bridge to go see E.T. And it's the flying is basically the E.T. theme that everybody knows. But when you listen to that, even though I don't like the movie that much, that E.T. theme and that flying theme just to me conveys or evokes childhood for me. It puts me, it's the magic of childhood. It puts me in 1982. It makes me think of, like I just said, going to see the movie with my mom and my brother. It makes me think of getting the E.T. video game. Yeah. The infamous E.T. video game that there is a landfill somewhere in the country filled with E.T. video games because it bankrupted Atari because nobody bought the video game. It makes me just think of that time in my life. I think I was in 3rd grade and just it evokes childhood, even though I don't love the movie. It's, and we keep bringing up magic, but it's hard not to with John Williams, that magic and wonder of childhood. And that theme is when they're running away from the government agents and E.T. is in the basket in front. It's the famous Amblin logo for Amblin Entertainment. But all the kids are running and they start to fly on the bicycles. And just hearing that theme, and it's one of the perfect matches of theme and visuals where they fly in front of the moon. And it's the way that Spielberg can do it too, because in the hands of the wrong director, the scene could be totally different. These are supposed to be kids, and Spielberg is perfect with kids in that they're getting chased by government agents, but you can see the amazement in their faces that, oh my God, we're like, this alien is making us fly on our bikes. And then now it could be something that could be so cynical with the way kids are written sometimes in movies to talk like they're 35-year-olds and to have quips and jokes ready. Spielberg has just always been able to capture what it means to be a kid and to make you feel like you're a kid again. And I just think that the Williams theme, that flying theme, just totally evokes that, and doesn't make the scene, but it just enhances it that much more. So I think both of those themes for movies, that one you've never seen and one that I don't like that much, I think it was fun, and we didn't plan that beforehand, that we could pick out tracks that still mean something to us, even though we don't have a close connection to the actual films.
Yeah, and I think I agree with everything you said. I think it's one of those moments that was really enhanced by that particular theme, and it was magic. It worked.
So what was your next choice? It's probably going to get back to something that you have more of a connection to than Jurassic Park, I would think. What's your next choice?
Yeah, well, we'll do so I wanted to throw in the Cantina Band from Star Wars really quick. And it was so funny because I was starting to pull, like, just, go back through listening to moments and deciding on, which pieces I wanted to bring here. And I had it on my laptop and, clicking around Spotify or whatever. And the Cantina Band theme popped up. And David was just in the room, my son, and he just screams. He's like, "That's the Cantina song!" Like, oh my gosh! So he hasn't seen the films, but he watches like a lot of the Lego, like, animated things that they've done.
Hey, it doesn't matter anyway that they make that connection.
Yeah, and it was just hilarious because he just instantly. We were maybe 10 seconds in, and he was like, immediately knew what it was, and again, I think it just speaks to how powerful some of these things are. And it's like, it's nothing special, and it's silly and it's goofy, and it's probably the most whimsical thing I feel like I hear in the Star Wars.
It is, but again, like, and I think I know the name for this episode is going to be John Williams, a shorthand for our lives, because again, it's short. People know the Cantina theme. It's been brought in, it's become embedded in pop culture. And I think you're saying, I listened to it just, as the lead up to this. And I think we all know the very beginning of it, the first couple seconds of it, but to listen to the whole thing, he's having fun. It doesn't sound like something John Williams would do, but you can see all of his influences in it. And he makes it, again, it's something, when you listen to it, you could say, okay, I see what he's going for here, but he makes it something just a bit askew and alien enough that you could say, okay, I could see this being in a wretched hive of scum and villainy somewhere on some backwater planet. But see, that's great that your son can hear it and just automatically know what it is. And of course, like I said, it was the entrance for my wedding reception. So.
I'd forgotten that. Yes. Yeah. So it was, it just made me laugh. So I felt like I had a special shout out for that piece. It's goofy, it's silly. And I think that's what's cool too. We said earlier on, everything feels so iconically John Williams without feeling redundant. And I think that's really cool. And so to just see him having a good time messing around with stuff is fun. It's just fun.
Yeah, not everything needs to be life or death or the biggest theme of the movie. It could just be something that is not a throwaway, but something that isn't as important as the main Star Wars theme or the Raiders March, but it's something that still touches you, and it's something that still people know. Again, bringing up a normie like my wife, she would know what the Cantina theme, not just because she walked into it for her wedding, but she would know what that is.
Yeah, and I think that's cool. I looked at Spotify, and again, I was looking at like the top, tracks, kind of like you were with Apple and your playlist and stuff, and to see, that was in like the top 10. I mean, obviously people enjoy it; like it's a good time. So, anyway, so I threw that one on there just as a little shout out to my kid.
But that speaks to what this music can do. It connects generations. I hear the Raiders theme and think of my dad because I, for some reason, just think of that was the first VHS tape that we ever rented when we got a VCR was Raiders of the Lost Ark because he loved the Raiders of the Lost Ark. So I think of my dad when I hear the Raiders theme. You're always going to think of your son when you hear that Cantina theme.
Yeah. So I included that. And then I think my last two, I already kind of talked about a little bit of the Battle of the Heroes, but I had picked Battle of the Heroes and Anakin versus Obi-Wan.
I'm glad you picked both of them because, and I thought maybe it was just me because I'm not a musician, but I had to look to see which one was which. I can see after listening, I listened to them back to back a couple times and I could see the subtle differences, but I don't think it's in a bad way. I think he just is bringing in themes from so many different other previous themes that he has, and he's bringing in the theme that he created for Anakin and Obi-Wan. That's why it sounds they sound very much alike.
Yeah, and it was funny. Like I was also going back through and I listened. I went back and found the the Mustafar battle scene and all of that, because that's where a lot of it comes into play in the films. And I was like, I feel like I'm missing something. And I was like, oh, there's two pieces here he's combining. And that's what's really cool. And I already kind of said that earlier when we were talking about Duel of the Fates, but especially in a lot of the big battle moments in particular, he layers pieces intentionally, right? You're getting the subtle changes as the characters progress, right? And the battle progresses and it gets darker and we hit the point of no return and he makes some dumb choices. And like you watch the emotional always
go to the high ground.
Always. Every time he does it, and I'm like, dude, don't. And it was so
don't come on, man.
I pulled up the fight scene just like on YouTube or something, just to kind of like go through my own brain, and I was like, okay, where is this lining up and everything? And David climbed up on the couch, and again, he hasn't really seen the films. Again, he's seen like the Lego, and he has like the Lego video games, like he knows the scenes roughly. And as he kept saying, well, this is what they do on my Lego thing, and I was like, I know. I was like, this is where it comes from. But we get towards the end of like the 8-minute sequence, as they're on the lava and Obi-Wan jumps over and he's like, don't do it. Like, don't, I see what you're thinking. Like, try it, and Dave was like, what's going on? I was like, oh, just you wait. He's about to make a real bad decision. This is a real bad moment for him. So it's just funny. Like, so he has seen like the big scene. And then I think he was a little like thrown off by the charred body.
By the immolation, because that's one of the names of the tracks on the Revenge of the Sith is immolation.
Yeah. Yep,
But
so
what
it
you're
was,
saying to speak to your point, he is
yeah,
basically telling a story with that
yes.
track.
Hmm.
He's telling a story because there's not a lot of dialogue in
There's
that.
almost none
I mean, I know
at
it
the very
cuts
end.
between the Yoda and Palpatine fight
Yes.
and Obi-Wan and Anakin, but there's not a lot of dialogue. So he is telling that story in
Yeah.
with the soundtrack, and
Yeah.
like you said, there are certain points in that fight that the musical cues bring up. I think I
Hmm.
brought it up when we talked. That scene when he looks at him, and again, it has more weight now as a parent when he looks at him and says, "I've failed you, Anakin. I've failed you." And the music in the background, that gets me. Even though, like I said, the weight of years and years of what I built up in my head of what Anakin and
Yeah.
Obi-Wan fighting was going to be, it could never match what I had
Mm-mm.
imagined all those years.
No.
The music combined with that line reading from Ewan McGregor like really does it. I mean, if
Yeah.
Han Solo is my favorite of all of them, Ewan McGregor is up there, probably at number 2, just because I love him as. And I know no offense to Alec Guinness, because the
No. Right.
OG
Right.
Obi-Wan, but I mean Ewan McGregor is Obi-Wan Kenobi at this
Yeah.
point, and just the
Yes.
music and his performance, yeah, that's one of my favorite Star Wars scenes. Just and
Yeah.
it's something subtle. I mean that whole fight, it's a good fight. I've said before I
Hmm.
like the Empire fight the best, but it's a
Yeah.
great, it holds so much weight, and that track and the soundtrack in general is helping to tell that story and helping to
Correct.
make you feel those emotions.
Yeah. I mean, it's a massive, massive moment. He doesn't go there with the intention to end Anakin. That was never the thought, right? And he makes a choice, and he has to decide, and he makes his decision ultimately. They both do, and but yeah, the music, I think, to be able to combine those themes, and like I said, there were echoes back to Duel of the Fates, a more tragic version of it. There's hints of music from Empire Strikes Back. Like there's just so many themes that show up in that moment. And it tells
Yeah.
a lot of the story. It really does, and it gives emotional weight to those moments, and the big decisions they had to make.
When I saw you had picked them, I kind of thought Duel of the Fates and Anakin Obi-Wan / Battle of the Heroes, they kind of bookend.
Yes.
It's the first and the last of the trilogy, but they bookend, and they're both the epic themes for both movies, and they bookend that prequel trilogy. And I do think if Duel of the Fates is that epic of Phantom Menace, then Anakin Obi-Wan is the epic of Revenge of the Sith, and not interchangeable, but like you said, there are elements of Duel of the Fates in
Yep.
Anakin Obi-Wan. So I do like that, how he, and again, I don't think you see that even with, or maybe you do see it with film series now just because of
Hmm.
John Williams, that it's like, okay, well, I'm going to create these motifs and I'm going to bring them back, and it's going to be shorthand. Again, I keep bringing that up for the
Yeah.
audience to know that, this is what is going on right now. So it was
Yeah. And
interesting that.
yeah, I think as somebody who, outside of these films and everything, a big passion of mine is musical theater, and you see that a lot in theater writing, right? These characters
Yep.
all wind up with particular motifs in their songs and the melodies they sing, and I mean even stylistically, right? For newer people, if you go watch Hamilton and you look at the different ways that Lynn writes all these characters and these lyrics, right? Like, and to see that still portrayed in a movie where it's not the main method of communication, right, is really cool. To have that skill and that ability to like weave that in the story as well. And so I think that's part of the reason I like John Williams' music so much. It
What
harkens on that idea.
you're bringing it up. Have you seen Fiddler on the Roof or listened to
Oh
his
yeah.
soundtrack
Yeah.
for Fiddler on the Roof? Because that is one I did not. I listened to the one of the top ones. I think it's the end song or the end credits for Fiddler on the Roof. So that's the only exposure I had to that. It was good, and I have
Mhm.
nothing against musical theater. I know what Fiddler on the Roof is. I've never listened to it.
Mhm.
So maybe he was bringing that into it when he was doing these soundtracks with
Yeah.
his experience with something like that. But yeah, it's we can't overstate enough how much thought that he has put into. I love watching on the DVD extras, especially for something like Star Wars that I am into so much, but also just to see everything that's put into it with the special effects, with the storytelling, with the costuming, but to also watch and see John Williams working with Lucas and saying, okay, well, we're going to do this and I want to convey this and I'm going to bring, the thought, none of these things are just thrown off. I mean, I'm sure there are composers or people when they're making movies who their dedication might not be 100%, but you can tell, I think, that John Williams knows this is part of his legacy and that he has that affinity for what he's done with Star Wars. So he knows that what he brings to it is an essential part. So he wants it to help tell the story.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing to see the work that he's put into it. And that kind of goes into my last pick for the main tracks that I picked was Rey's theme from The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
And the reason I picked that is when the sequels were coming out, you knew that John Williams was going to do the music. You knew that they were going to bring back some of the original cast members, but you knew that they were also bringing in newer cast members. And it was a new story. It wasn't the prequels where you were going to be getting the lead up to the originals. This was a continuation. So you're always thinking, what are they going to bring that's new to this? Is it just going to be, in 2015, I was thinking, is it just going to be all nostalgia because that's what they want to do? And Disney wants to make sure, I mean, you're going to have a hit with Star Wars anyway, but are they just going to do it as nostalgia or are they going to try something new? And I'm eventually going to do an episode on the sequels and people can argue about the sequels. It's Star Wars fans, so they're going to argue anyway. But hearing Rey's theme, especially that first scene when you're introduced to her and she's sliding down on the sand.
Yep.
I can remember just thinking in my head, okay, I am going to love this character. And if this is...
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
My head, okay, I am going to love this character. And if this is what they're going to do, this is going to be great because it's something different. And it's very much like the Yoda theme in that it's very playful and it's very gentle, but then it builds up into something more and it conveys her sense of discovery, I think, of what her destiny is in a different way than Luke. Luke's discovery, because he knew about the Empire and he was fighting against the Empire. For me, her journey is a little bit different of trying to discover just basically who she is, because she's been on her own her whole life. Yeah, and it's almost like an introduction to newer fans and say, okay, this is your entry point. Yeah, and this is now, and maybe this is why some people, and we'll get into it when I finally do a sequel episode, but this is now yours. Other people like this, and you can still like it, but now this is for a younger generation or a newer generation or newer fans.
Yeah.
And that, to me, I just think it's a great piece of music, but it just evokes, again, a time and place. It evokes 2015 and, oh, there's a new Star Wars and I can't wait. And this is going to be something new. And oh my God, this is something that's different. And I love this. I love Rey. I think she's a great character. And I've always latched on to that theme from the sequel. So it's one of my favorite of his.
Yeah, no. And you echoed exactly what I was going to say. I feel like it became an entry point of accessibility for new fans. Right. So yeah, nothing really to add there. I was just gonna say exactly what I was gonna throw in there, and you said it. So yeah, I think it's a fun theme, and it works really well. And she was actually the actress
Daisy Ridley.
Daisy Ridley, yeah. I was like, I'm gonna get her last name wrong, so I'm just not gonna say it. She was actually.
That's okay. I couldn't remember Andy Kaufman earlier.
No,
so.
I was like, I'm gonna say it, and then like, what if I'm wrong? And then I look stupid.
It's a podcast. It's a podcast. Nobody's gonna know if you're wrong or not. It's just coming on here and talking like you're right. And then
True. She was one of the guests at the concert, so she came in.
Oh, okay.
A little message to him, and it was cool to like see her in person. But yeah. No, I think it was one of the new pieces that really really worked really well. And it
Yeah, and I like I
yeah.
think I feel bad. We're going to bring this back to current events again. I feel bad for what she has gone through after the sequels.
Yeah.
And again, I keep saying I will do eventually a sequel podcast. I want to do it with my son because I did the
Yeah.
prequels with you because that's your generation. I'll eventually do the original trilogy with old dorks like me. And then I want to do the sequels with Xander because that's his
Yeah.
generation.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I don't like I feel bad because I think she did everything that they asked her to do, and I think she was great.
Yeah.
I think she did open the door for newer fans, and especially for females to see themselves
Yeah.
and say, I can be the chosen one. I can be the one who is the badass. I can be
Yeah.
the one who is the main character in Star Wars. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
not that Leia wasn't, because Leia is an awesome character, but
Sure.
this is, she is the main thrust of the whole sequel trilogy.
Correct. Yeah.
And it's just I really think it's just that the theme to me, like I said, I can remember driving after the movie had come out and playing the soundtrack in my car. And that is just the one that stood out to me, and just saying, okay, this is what I feel like is the theme of this new movie. It's
Yeah.
new and it's fresh, and it's I like seeing the older characters, but these are new characters now that I enjoy seeing, because I
Yeah.
enjoy those three. The three, you always have to have the three main characters in Star Wars, but I enjoy those three characters, and thinking, because that was, Xander was only 4 then, and thinking,
Right.
okay, these are going to be the characters that are his generation of characters.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what that theme has always meant for me. And
Totally.
looping it back around, I can hear the throne room theme and remember being a kid and hearing that theme in my head as I'm riding my bike and making pretend I'm flying an X-Wing fighter.
Yeah.
And then 44 years later, I can hear Ray's theme, and it means something totally different to me, but it still touches me in a way that not many pieces of music do. So that's that magic that spans generations, that John Williams has somehow, and I don't think he'll ever tell anybody, because why would he, tapped into and has been able to do
Yeah.
with my generation, with your generation, and now with the generation of not only my kids, but your kid also.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, it's going to keep going.
Yeah.
And you're one day on a podcast that are beamed right directly into your brain. Your
Right.
son is going to be doing a podcast and talking about why, the Obi-Wan theme that John Williams did means something to him, and talking about remembering doing things with you and your parents.
Yeah.
Were there any other themes that you wanted to talk about that just were? I know you were worried when you were messaging me with all the ones you were picking.
No, I don't think so.
No, I'm kidding. I love it. I'd be more worried if you messaged me and said, I don't know, I can't pick any. I wanted to do Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Jaws.
I'm happy with the ones that we shared. And I, was looking yesterday, and even before we jumped on, I went back and pulled up the couple pictures I posted from when I went to the concert. And I know I keep talking about it, but it really was like, I don't think I'll ever experience anything like that. Like, to know John was in the room, to see him conduct, to be 90 years old and hearing the impact he's had with these lifelong people, they worked with George and Steven. And
yeah. I mean, you just said that. That was like, you just said that. It's the same as being I remember going to see Paul McCartney in 1993 and thinking I'm in the same space as a Beatle.
Yeah, I was like, literally, we were in the balcony, and I could like look down. He's on the floor, and I'm like, he's right there. Like, I could throw my paper and hit him in the head. Not that I ever would, but like,
don't do that.
Close, you know what I mean? I was like, oh my god, he's right there. And I was like, like that crazy emotional. Which, I was made fun of for, which is fine. But I mean, I think it was like watching these clips, and there were, like they showed film, and again, they showed like messages to him from people.
Sure.
Like, it was really, really special. And again, just that feeling of like, this is something that is going to live forever. And like, that's such a wild feeling. And my son, probably, it was a couple of years back now, so he was maybe 3. Like, he obviously wasn't with me or anything, but like, just to know that like oh, I get to show him Jurassic Park one day. But we'll sit down and we'll all watch it for the first time. You know, like I get to show him these things, and to sit there a few seats over from my dad, who, you know, was my doorway into a lot of this, right? Like it's just cool, and I think it's impossible to overstate how deeply ingrained John is in this world for all of us. And I think, I don't know, from final thoughts, ending note, whatever, but like I just think there would be no Star Wars, there would be no wizards, there would be no aliens or horrible, terrifying sharks, you know, without John Williams. And I think that's what makes what he does so incredible. And I feel really lucky to have been in the room with him, right? To be a person who lives in this timeline, right? That gets to experience it while it's happening. And I think that's something we're going to be like, one day he won't be creating new pieces. And so to be able to take them in now is so special. And I think, you know, I think about the like Star Wars spinoffs and things that we've gotten that maybe he didn't do something for, people tried to mimic him. And you can tell, like, as somebody who appreciates his artistry, you can tell it's not, like, it doesn't necessarily take away for it from me, but you can tell it's not him. And so I think I just consider myself really lucky to like live in an era where we had access, and we continue to have until he passes, unfortunately, you know, to his genius. And I guess I feel really lucky and really grateful that this is all a part of my life and my son's life and my dad's life and your son's and all of these people all around the world. That's what I just remember sitting there thinking, and continue to think, like, the magnitude and the amount of people and amount of pieces of art that he's been a part of and will continue to be is just, it's mind-blowing. It's like so cool to have been on this planet at the same time as somebody like this. And that's, I don't know, that's where I'll stop my rambling now. But I remember sitting there thinking and just crying through it, just thinking like how many moments he's been involved with that I don't think we even realize half the time, like, that have impacted us all so deeply. Like I said, the Olympics theme for the rest of our lives, we're going to hear that every 2 to 4 years, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's just something simple, right? Some little thing that he did, and you know, just how iconic everything he touches is. So I just think it's really cool. He's a really cool guy, and I can't give him enough credit. So
no, you should never apologize. And that was perfect. That was a perfect encapsulation of what we were just talking about for almost 2 hours. You know, I can listen to something like the Across the Stars, the Anakin and Padme theme.
yes,
And that was one I considered. And even though, and we joke about it, there's some times in the prequels that I don't buy the love story between them.
Sure.
I know as a Star Wars fan that this has to happen.
Yeah.
So under a lesser person, with the shaky chemistry between the two actors, it might not have worked. But John Williams, and especially that theme, pushes it over the finish line to make you, by the time of the end of that movie, when, and I was talking about it earlier, I like the Attack of the Clones soundtrack. That end montage where you see the clone army, and then it cuts, and the orchestration rises to the Anakin and Padme theme, and you see them getting married. Yeah. And then that always hits me, because you know, okay, this is where it starts now. This is where this is where his fall starts, and it's mostly because of John Williams' music. I can listen to the Hymn for the Fallen from Saving Private Ryan, and irregardless of the movie, it makes me honestly think about the sacrifices that not only people in World War II, but people like my dad, who was in Vietnam, and people who are now serving in the military have given for our country. And that's because of that music. I can listen to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and I almost picked, and I don't know why, but it's something that, and maybe it's because I was so young and heard it when the movie was first coming out, that has always stuck with me. Yeah. And for him to be able to create that, and it could be something that's weird because it's supposed to be aliens, and it's supposed to be humans and aliens first having contact with each other, and they're using music to contact one another and to communicate. And I'm sure to people who are not fans of these movies or fans of soundtracks, or who just aren't into it the way we are, they can look at it and say, like, I don't get that, I don't understand, but it somehow hits me somewhere. Yeah. and makes me feel something visceral. And that's just the magic of what John Williams can do. To get the episode before this one that's going to be releasing next week, it's called Growing Up Geek, and it's about not only being a parent who is into all this geeky stuff, but raising kids. And when I say geek, I mean it in a funny way. I don't mean it in a derogatory way. But raising kids to get into this kind of stuff. And John Williams is a gateway.
Yes.
When your kids, and I say it in that podcast, when I held my son, one of my first thoughts was, how am I going to do this? And I'm a father now. But then one of my other first thoughts was, I can't wait till he can watch Star Wars with me. Yes. And one of the first things he knew was the Star Wars theme, because I would just play the Star Wars theme. Yeah. He knew the Raiders of the Lost Ark theme. I put him on my knees and my feet and made him fly and did the Superman theme, like I said. He knew the Imperial March, just like your son knows the Imperial March. So, as we've said, John Williams, he spans not only the universe with his music, but he spans generations, and he brings generations together. He makes you think about your dad and your mom, and he makes you think about your son, and he makes me think of, I'm looking at a Raiders of the Lost Ark poster, and I think of my dad, and I think of sitting in my basement as a kid and watching Raiders of the Lost Ark and seeing the preview for Temple of Doom that was before it in 1984 and thinking, oh my God, I get to see another Indiana Jones movie. Yeah. And you go out and play and you have adventures, and the Raiders of the Lost Ark March is in your head. Yeah. This is what John Williams does. He is truly the soundtrack of our lives. Yeah. And his music will live on well beyond him and well beyond us and well beyond 2 or 3 generations. Yeah. The one good thing when I put this out there that we were recording this episode is, I always say to people, give us your feedback or tell us about memories of the stuff that we're recording about. And sometimes I get one or two things. I think with John Williams, speaking of the power of John Williams, we had a lot of people who shared their feelings about John Williams. So I wanted to read a couple of things, a little bit of the feedback we got before we get out of here.
Sure.
On Facebook, we got a message from Melissa Nicholson, who hopefully will be podcasting with me soon. I want to do a Doctor Who episode with her. Oh, nice. But yeah, it's going to be fun. So when I asked about famous John Williams soundtracks or just individual tracks, she said, oh gosh, this is a legitimately tough question. Her number 1 was Harry Potter, number 2 was Indiana Jones, and number 3 was Star Wars. And she said, Harry Potter for me is number 1 because I got to see the films in the movie theater, and the music just adds to the experience. John Williams' music for the first 3 Harry Potter films is truly magical. I definitely was surrounded by John Williams' composed music for a good chunk of my childhood. He's absolutely my favorite composer. He brings uniqueness to each film. And I think that's one thing you'll see with everybody is their memories is from their childhood, I think. Yeah. That's what they grew up with.
Totally.
Who else do I have here? I have Brad Ryder, who goes under the name Big Beard Booty Daddy on Twitter, says, I have been listening to a lot of John Williams' work recently, watching a lot of Spielberg recently with my daughter. We hear him a lot, and now he's one of the names she recognizes during opening credits. I forgot he did the music for Harry Potter, and that's her favorite series. He also said it's been fun. It's been a fun ride rewatching all these movies, but seeing her reactions for the first time. It's not often we can see a movie for the first time again. So that is, again, something you share with your kids and that enhances the experience. Yeah. Also on Twitter, from Donut Eater 111 said, from the ones I've heard, I'd say Jurassic Park's main theme does a good job capturing the fun, whimsical nature of the pre-chaos island, the epic adventure, and portrays a decent amount of emotions. But he really does have some truly iconic themes. And I think that, again, he tells a story with the themes with most of the themes that he puts out there. Mm-hmm. We had Danner Ulrich on Twitter, gave us his favorite soundtracks. He said number 1, Empire Strikes Back, which I can't disagree with. I think that's his best one. Number 2, Star Wars, and number 3, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And he said his top 3 from Empire were the Imperial March, The Battle in the Snow, and The Asteroid Field.
Yeah.
And he also added, overall, there really isn't a bad thing that John Williams has done. His score elevates every movie. He also said, I got caught up in the 20th anniversary hype and bought the CDs when the Star Wars Special Edition trilogy was released. Blasted the soundtracks with the windows down, driving along I-4 in the Orlando area. Which I have done that a few times. Not in Orlando, but in the Philadelphia area. We have Bill Dunn from Twitter, who has been on this podcast before. He says, I don't know, I have to go with Raiders, with Jurassic Park as a second place and Superman as a third. All those themes, just when I heard them, just enthralled me. We have the History on Film podcast. Those guys have been on this podcast also. They chimed in on Twitter and said, you've probably never heard of it, but he wrote the score for a genre film in the 70s called Star Wars that I really liked as a kid. I don't think I'm familiar with that one.
Yeah, I have no idea what they're talking about.
I know, it might be out of print. I'm not sure. We had Melody, who has also been on this podcast, covering the Muppets, said, you'd be hard-pressed to find a person who had more cultural impact on our society than John Williams. Yeah. But they also said, but oh man, Binary Sunset makes me tear up every time, which that is one of the best ones. I did consider having Binary Sunset on there. Back to Facebook, we had Jay Yaws chime in and say, while I might prefer other scores as a whole, the final flying theme suite from E.T. is absolutely perfect. I get chills just thinking about it, let alone listening to it. Yeah. And so yes, I thank everybody for the feedback. I had a feeling that with asking them the question about John Williams that I would get a lot of responses because as we have discussed ad nauseum on this podcast, John Williams has touched. I mean, can you imagine just knowing that you've touched and inspired that many people to go out and make their own music or to go out and make films or just to have those memories with family members? Yeah, it's and for people who don't think that the arts are important, I think that's because with this podcast, I always say I don't want to just do episodes and say, okay, let's talk about John Williams music and what's your favorite and is this good? I would rather do what we just did and talk about why these things are important to us and why they mean something to us. So to have, even if you did, John Williams made us afraid to swim in the water. Right. He made us believe a man could fly. He made us believe that a farm boy on a planet that is the furthest from the center of the galaxy could find inspiration and lead a rebellion to destroy an empire. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a pretty good legacy, I would say.
Yeah, the power of John Williams and the legacy he's got. So, really, really incredible.
I'm definitely be listening back to this podcast to edit it and cry a couple of times. So, but before I do that, I just want to thank you again for being our first returning guest.
Aww, what an honor.
You came down, you knew the good place to sit on the couch down in the pop culture basement and to get the best view of the TV. And but no, honestly, when I was this was one of the first episodes when I was thinking about doing this podcast that I thought about doing, and I knew that I was going to have you on. So I was just glad that you agreed to come back, basically. And now I'm trying to think of another one that I can think of to have you back. I'll think of something eventually.
Yeah.
But I was glad that you were my first returning guest. Is there anything you want to get out there for anybody to tell them to? I would not, because why would you want anybody bothering you at all?
No, not really anything. No, I'm just grateful that we get to be here and have these conversations, and it's fun. It's fun to think back on the impact that all of these things have had on us and continue to have on us and our families and future generations. So it's cool. I'm glad I got to be here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you being on, especially because we don't get to see or talk to each other that much. So there is at least one good thing about social media is you get to talk to people that you don't live near, and it gets you to actually, get off your butt and say, hey, I'm going to start a podcast so then I can talk to people that I really want to talk to face to face instead of just talking to them on a keyboard. So
right.
I guess there's some good things about social media.
Sometimes,
but Yeah, speaking of social media, I say this at the end of. I should probably say it at the beginning of episodes, so then people will remember it, because maybe they don't listen to the end. They better listen to the end of this one. We are on Twitter. I'm not going to call it the other thing. We're on Bluesky, and I'm just asking everybody, please like and share the episodes. Help to get these out there. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, tell them to listen about John Williams, and they'll cry during this podcast and think about their childhood. But yeah, Kristina, I want to thank you again for being on, and I want to thank everybody else for listening, and say we will be back soon with something. I haven't decided what the next episode is going to be, mostly because I'm a parent and have to figure out when I can actually podcast. So it's either very early in the morning or very late at night. So we will be back very soon with a new episode. I would love to give you a preview of what that is, but I don't know what it is. But until then, hope everybody has a great day, a great week, a great month, a great year. Go listen to John Williams. Go cry, go laugh, go look up into the sky, go fly an X-Wing fighter, and just go and be awesome to everybody. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai